We had a crew coming back one day. I was at Lynham. I wasn't down there at the time, but it was one of our 30 squadron crews. This was the time I was OC 30, and the captain was a guy called Bill Achister. And Bill was an old died in the. I mean, he'd been in the Air Force forever, and this was his last tour. And he had one eye. He had one glass eye and one eye. I mean, how he managed to land a Herc, I don't know, but he did. Well, they were coming back to Ascension, and on the way back, the thunderstorm came in, and it was the mother and father of all thunderstorms. It was so bad. Someone obviously thought we ought to get a tanker airborne so we can refuel this guy because he's coming back on minimums. Weather's atrocious. The Victor crew, who were being called out to go and mount the tanker, could not get down to the airfield from the accommodation because the road was blocked and the rain was too bad. It was flooded, so they couldn't get airborne. So Bill and his crew got back to Ascension. Couldn't see anything. Couldn't see the runway. Couldn't see anything. Just cloud, rain, turbulence. They had a load of troops down the back, full load of troops. So Bill said they did about 3 or 4 approaches, coming down to the run. Couldn't see anything. Broke off and cleared. And they got to the point where they were down to minimums, and they were either going to run out of fuel. And Bill said, "Right, we'll make one more approach." He said, "And then we're going to ditch with all this load of troops." So you can imagine what the atmosphere was like on the flight deck. Now the Uganda, which was a troop ship, happened to be moored off Ascension at that time. So what they arranged to do was the Uganda launched its lifeboats ready. They would ditch alongside the Uganda in its lee away from the waves, and hopefully they'd see what happened and get away with it. As they made the last approach, and the way you make the approach in fog or on a thunderstorm is one of the crew, usually the captain, left-hand seat guys, flies on instruments, right? He's head down on instruments, not looking out. The co-pilot is not looking out, he's at the instruments, he's looking out. So you've got a pair of eyes looking out, a pair of eyes looking in. So, and you're in fog, in this case they're in the clouds. So they're coming down the finals, and Bill was just about to go overshoot and go and ditch, literally on his last thing before they ditched. And Paul Oborne, who was the co-pilot at the time, said, "I've got the lights," and they got it down and landed. And they found out subsequently that if that Victor crew had got down to the airfield and rolled and tried to get airborne, they could well have killed themselves because the rain, the runway went up and over a bump and down. On the other side of the bump, which the Victor used the whole runway, the rocks had fallen off the mountainside and washed down onto the runway, and they could easily have had a nasty. But as it happened, the Herc managed to get in. Great sigh of relief, few beers afterwards, and Bill and the crew got the Flight Safety Award, of the year for that because they handled it beautifully.